I want to look at the issue of wisdom, where wisdom comes from, and how Proverbs can give us wisdom. And so we're going to spend 6 weeks studying the book of Proverbs. And again, I want to repeat, everyone make sure you have your handout. Make sure you have a pen. We're going to use 4 colors for the 4 steps of our Bible study today. And let me write these out. And so for blue, we're going to use observation. Now, hopefully, a lot of you guys have those 4 color pens. I only had 30 of them. Sorry if we ran out. We use 4 colors for the 4 steps of our Bible study. Blue is for observation. Green is for interpretation. All right, you got to get used to this clicking sound. I love this clicking sound. Black is for application. And red is for Jesus factor. Now, if you don't know what the Jesus factor is, we'll get to it, okay? And so now we're starting with blue. And I want to start with observation. So we're just going to go through the text, and we're going to look at all the little details. And what I'm going to do, this is not information that I want to give you. These are skills that I want to train you in. And so for the next 6 weeks, we're going to learn how to study the Bible, using Proverbs as an example. Now, we're looking at poetry, poetic literature, and specifically wisdom literature. And so all these different genres of the Bible have slightly different tools that we use as well. So we're going to learn a lot of poetic tools. But a lot of the other tools that we've already learned in previous series apply here as well. The first one, basic facts. This is who, what, where, when, and how. Now, in narrative, there's a lot of basic facts because there's a lot of action going on. In poetry, not so much. There's not a lot of action going on in poetry. But still, there's some of the basic facts. The who, what, where, when, how. Specifically, who comes up a lot. And so let me just read verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. So already we have a who. So whenever we see these basic facts, what I do is underline it and write what category it is. This is a who. Son of David is the same person, but it's still a who. King of Israel is a who. And the reason we want to write, this is by Solomon. So Solomon is the writer of the majority of Proverbs. There are some other authors in there as well, but Solomon wrote most of it. And it's significant that he's not saying just that he's Solomon. He's Solomon, son of David, Solomon, king of Israel. So it's pointing to his identity and significance in writing this book. Now, you know the story of Solomon. When he first became king, God gave him, said, hey, Solomon, what do you want? And Solomon said, I want wisdom. I want to rule this kingdom wisely. And so God said, you picked so well, I'm going to give you wisdom. You didn't ask for riches, you didn't ask for power, so I'm going to give you wisdom and riches and power. And so Solomon became one of the greatest kings in all of Israel because of that. And also, as the son of David, the king of Israel, he comes from this line of anointed kings. This line where God had promised that David would have a descendant on the throne forever. That there would be eventually an eternal king coming from the line of David. So Solomon comes within that line. And so within the whole plan of God's salvation throughout history, Solomon is in that line. And so this is the significance of the author that we're reading from. Okay? And what? Now, I'm going to go ahead. We have to move a little quickly here. I apologize from the beginning because we only have 45 minutes, and now it's already 9 minutes past. So let me read for you verses 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And so, the what. Already from the beginning, it's wisdom. This is the what of the passage. Solomon is writing, and he's writing for the purpose of giving wisdom. And the basic facts tell us the background, the setting of the Bible passage that we're reading, but we have a lot of other tools as well. So one of them is repetition. Now, I'm going to try to give enough examples of each of these so that we can learn how to do them ourselves. And hopefully you could take these tools and use them in other passages of the Bible as well. So what I do when I find repetition, I take a symbol or a shape and I mark that word. Now, a lot of people like to be neat and clean, like this underline has to be really straight and everything and not cover the word. I'm not all about that. I don't regard prettiness as a value in Bible study. And so I get ugly on these things. So I'll pick a shape. For example, triangle will represent wisdom. So I'll just write a triangle right over it. Now, it covers the word. I know some people really get bothered by that, but you could still read it, right? Okay, so wisdom. So there's all these repetitions of the word wisdom. For example, wise dealing, and verse 7, wisdom and instruction, words to the wise. Verse 5, let the wise hear and increase. Wisdom all over the place. But it doesn't just stop with the word wisdom, because there's the concept of wisdom too. There's a lot of words that are similar to wisdom. For example, instruction. Words of insight are examples of wisdom. To receive, again, instruction. And so throughout the passage, okay, here's a moment where I would normally take some time to have you find the repetition, but it's all over the place. It's not so hard. Righteousness, justice, equity, prudence, knowledge, discretion, learning, guidance. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay, maybe I missed a couple. I don't know. But the point is, wisdom is all over this first passage. And in many, many different ways, it describes wisdom. And so what we see here, normally when you see a lot of repetition in a passage, it emphasizes that thing is important. Because the Bible usually says something once and only once. And so if it says it twice, 3 times, or in this case, I don't know, like 12, 15 times, it's very important. Now, it's not only said multiple times here, but in multiple ways. And so it's emphasizing the importance of wisdom. It's also emphasizing the multifaceted wisdom. Now, multifaceted, you think of a diamond with all those solid edges and surfaces, these facets, and each one reflects and refracts the light at different angles so that the diamond is just brilliant. From every different angle, it shines differently. And that's like wisdom. And all these different words to describe wisdom, it's giving you a fuller picture. Wisdom is not just one thing. It's multiple aspects of wisdom that this book is going to talk about. Multifaceted wisdom. And the reason, it's to fit all reality. This is an idea of wisdom itself. Wisdom is understanding reality. It's a proper understanding of reality to fit the rules and behavior and principles according to that reality. For example, gravity. You know that gravity exists. So when you, when you fly in a plane, you get nervous because you know gravity exists. And so your rules fit the reality. If you have a misunderstanding of reality, you're going to live incorrectly. You're going to live dangerously because you don't understand reality. So all these different facets of wisdom are to fit the different facets of reality, every single situation. And so Proverbs covers situations and instances of applications of wisdom from all over life. And we're going to see that throughout the book of Proverbs. Now, so we have the repetition here showing just the emphasis of what this book is about. And then we have a little poetry. All right, so here we have to get a little bit technical, if it hasn't been already. I'm going to talk about parallelism. Parallelism, just as it sounds, is something that is parallel. 2 straight lines, but in geometry. But in this case, 2 lines of poetry. And sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 4. But the general idea is at least 2 lines of poetry that reflect each other or related to each other in some way. And so I'm going to share 3 terms for different types of parallelism. Now, there are different scholars that use different terms, but they're basically the same meaning. And where I got these, just a little book plug, this book, How to Read Proverbs by Tremper Longman III. It's a pretty easy to read, easy to understand book on understanding Proverbs and how to read and interpret Proverbs. So this is one book that I recommend. I'll try to give you different book plugs as we go through the series. But this is a good basic book on Proverbs. And it has a good section on describing the different types of parallelism. Now, 3 types of parallelism. First, simple. Simple parallelism, you imagine you have 2 lines of poetry. And imagine just pick 2 elements within that line. You have an A and you have a B. Okay, and so line 2 comes along. And it looks very similar, A and B. But maybe it's a little different. It's slightly maybe emphasized. This is a plus, okay, A plus. Maybe it's more specific. Maybe it's an example of the B. Somehow it's augmented, amplified. But it's pretty much the same idea. So line 1 has A and B, line 2 has A and B. That's simple parallelism. And so I'll mark that in the text by writing parallel lines between the 2. Okay, you find the A element, parallel lines. Find the B element, parallel lines. Example of that in verse 5. Let the wise hear and increase their learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. So the wise is very similar to the one who understands. So I'm going to write just parallel lines between wise and one. And increase in learning, obtain guidance. Learning and guidance, very similar. So parallel lines between learning and guidance. And this way, I can see the parallelism and take note of it. And try to figure out how it adds meaning to the text. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But another type of parallelism is antithetical. Antithetical parallelism, antithetical simply means opposite. So antithetical parallelism, instead of the A and B leading to another A and B, imagine a positive A and a positive B leading to a negative A and a negative B. And so the second line is opposite from the first line. So they're teaching the same thing, but from the opposite perspective. And so again, I write parallel lines between the 2, but then I just write a slash through it to mark that this is antithetical, opposite. Same with the B. Example of that in verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So those who fear the Lord are the opposite of the fools. So parallel lines, slash through it. And the beginning of knowledge is the opposite of despising wisdom and instruction. So parallel lines and a slash through it. Okay? Antithetical parallelism. Now the third one is called chiastic parallelism. Now, I taught this lesson for the youth group last year. And I told them, if you can remember the term chiastic parallelism, you'll really impress your parents. Now, maybe you guys, if you remember chiastic parallelism, you'll impress your kids. I don't know. But chiastic comes from the word chi, which is one of the letters of the Greek alphabet. It looks like an X. That's a chi. So line 1, so you have an A and you have a B. Line 2, it'll be the opposite. You have a B and then an A. So it just reverses the order. Now, honestly, this one is a little tricky because we're working with an English translation. And sometimes the English translations reverse the order and you don't even know it. But the good translations have tried to be faithful in terms of preserving the poetic value of the text. And so hopefully that'll be valuable to you as well. Now, so what I mark it with, not with parallel lines, but with crossed lines because it's chiastic. It's like an X. Okay? So that's how I mark a chiastic parallelism. And we haven't seen that yet, but we'll see it later on in the text. Now, why is parallelism important? Spending a lot of time on it because we're going to see it all over the Book of Proverbs. What it does is it gives you a fuller view. It gives you a better view. And in my own terms, I would say it gives you a 3D view. Now, I got to illustrate this with a little, I don't know, excuse me for being a little silly, but last month I saw Star Wars The Force Awakens. And I was waiting for this movie. I've been waiting all my life for this movie. And I finally came out, and so I have to illustrate parallelism with an official pair of Kylo Ren 3D glasses. Okay, I'm going to put these on. Now, I know I look ridiculous. But if you see me wearing Kylo Ren 3D glasses, you will never ever forget this value of parallelism. So if 3D glasses work with polarized lenses, now I'm not going to explain what that means, but the one lens filters out a certain type of light, the other lens filters out another type of light. So you have one projector projecting one type of light for the right eye, another projector projecting another type of light for the left eye, slightly different images, so your brain puts it together and gives you a 3D view. Because you're able to see something from two different angles, it looks 3D. It looks like the X-Wing fighter is just right in front of your face. And so that's like parallelism. One line is not enough. It's got to give you another line, a second line to give you another view. And it's not just those 2 points, but giving you a fuller view of the whole image, a 3D view through parallelism. Okay? I can take these off now, right? All right. Excellent. So that's parallelism. And we saw a few examples of that, of simple parallelism, antithetical parallelism. Okay, here I have to ask you guys. I know maybe some of you were in the youth lesson, so don't give away the answer. But does anyone see another example within verses 1 through 7 of parallelism? Someone tell me, what verse? Is there another example? We saw verse 5, we saw verse 7. Is there another verse?
6.
Verse what?
6.
6? To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Okay. So you could say that proverbs are like words of the wise, and sayings are like riddles. Okay, that's interesting. Anywhere else? Verse what? 2? To know wisdom, instruction, to understand words of insight. Oh, okay. Okay. So knowing and understanding, wisdom, instruction, words of insight. Very good. Anywhere else? 5 we got. We got 5. Verse 4. Okay, what's that? To give yes. To give prudence is like knowledge and discretion, and the simple is like the youth. Okay. You guys are pretty good. You found these other ones too. I was really looking for verse 4. And the reason for that is because if A equals A and B equals B, that means the simple equals the youth. Now, when I was teaching the youth, this was, hopefully this was not too offensive, calling the youth simple. But parallelism, it helps you to understand the deeper meaning of it. So simple, when we just say simple without any context, we think that means stupid, that means slow, that means unable to learn. But in this case, we know that simple equaling youth simply means inexperienced. Simple doesn't mean slow, unable to learn. Simple just means someone who doesn't have experience, someone who is young. And so there's an opportunity for those who are inexperienced to learn wisdom. And then you have comparison, and you have contrast. So comparison, 2 elements that are talking about the same thing and similar in some way, but related. So the simple and the youth, like the wise and the one who understands. So usually I mark a comparison, I just circle the 2 elements and join them with a line. So the simple, the unexperienced, the young, they need to learn wisdom. But also those who are wise, those who are old, those who already understand, they also need to learn wisdom. And so wisdom in Proverbs is not just for those who are young, not just for those who are inexperienced. It's also for those who are old, those who have learned a lot. So for the young, for the old, for the experienced, for the inexperienced, wisdom is for everyone. So here's another basic fact. The who, it's for everyone. And here, to understand a proverb, here's another parallelism. A proverb, a saying, words of the wise, and their riddles. What these are, this is the how. How do you learn wisdom? You learn wisdom through proverbs. Now, that may not seem so obvious, but these are actually different types of proverbs. There's a proverb itself, which is a proverb. There's other types of sayings, like wise sayings, words of the wise, and riddles. Often they use riddles, like these really interesting images that you have to figure out what they mean. And so these are not like, haha, that's funny riddles. These are trying to figure out to interpret the wisdom riddles. So that's how Solomon is going to teach wisdom to everyone, anyone who would read this book. Okay? So that we have comparison in contrast to the fools. The wise and the simple who are willing to learn, who want to learn, desiring to learn wisdom, versus the fool. So for contrast, I link those two and use these two lines here to mark the contrast. But fools despise wisdom. They despise instruction. They don't want to read Proverbs. They don't have the time for it. And so the contrast between the one who is wise is not necessarily the one who is experienced, the one who's learned, the one who's older, because the young and the old both need wisdom. It's the one who wants to learn. This is the wise person who is desiring for it. But the fool is the one who despises that learning, who doesn't want it. All right. And so now, let's change our colors. We're going to do a little interpretation here. Interpretation, what we do is just find the main points. Now, in narrative, there's usually one passage that's a unified section that has one main point for the whole thing. In poetry, specifically in Proverbs, there are little points all over the place. And so it's really hard to define what one unit of literature is, one section. And so sometimes you have just one verse that has its own main point, or 10 verses, or a whole chapter, or a whole section. And so it's really hard to find just one main point. So when I find a section that has a pretty strong point, I'm just going to write it down. So I look at all these different repetitions of the type of wisdom, the multifaceted wisdom, reflecting all different types of reality, situations of reality, that the wisdom is for everyone. And wisdom, through reading the Proverbs, I feel like it's emphasizing the completeness of wisdom, for everyone. So, if you read Proverbs, you will gain wisdom for every situation, for every person. And when you have a main point, you have to have an application to tie to that main point. Now, a lot of people do application before the main point. The problem with doing application before the main point is you don't know if it's really tied to the text. But after you've found the main point, then you can find what the application of this passage is. Now, for me, my simple application was read Proverbs. If Solomon is saying the purpose of this book is to know wisdom, to receive instruction, to give prudence, to understand all these things, this is the purpose of Proverbs, is to give you wisdom, then you better read it. You better study it, and you will gain wisdom. And you have to desire it for all situations, for every person, the completeness of wisdom. Okay? Now, we have to move on. This section here, verses 8 and 9, let me read this. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. All right? Someone tell me the parallelism. Yes. Yes, okay. So the garland, there's a graceful garland and pendants, neck and head. And anywhere else? Yes, father and mother. And hear and forsake not. All right? So Solomon is telling, hear, my son, forsake not. And what are you supposed to hear? Your father's instruction, your mother's teaching. And it's not saying your father says one thing, your mother says another thing. They're saying the same thing from different angles, different perspectives. It's different sources of the same wisdom. Now, what this is imagery. Imagery is all over poetic literature and all over the book of Proverbs. And so when you find an image, it describes this picture of something to teach a spiritual truth. So when you find an imagery in the Bible, what you want to do, you look for two things. Look for the object of the image. What is that image trying to teach you? And what is the thing that it's referring to? It's this garland of grace, this pendant, is not talking about jewelry, okay? That's not the point. It's teaching something else. So what is that thing that it's teaching? And also, the characteristic. The characteristics of that image. So they give an image because it has certain characteristics. It's describing a picture. So for example, a garland, a thing on the crown on your head, pendants, a necklace on your neck. The characteristics that are emphasized here are not, is it red? Is it blue? Is it shiny? Is it metal? Those are not the characteristics. What are the characteristics of this? What kind of image do you get from this garland, the graceful garland on your head, the pendants for your neck? What are the characteristics of this image? What is it?
Royal.
Royal? Is that what you said? Okay. So maybe What is it? Importance. Royal, important. Honoring. What else? Beauty. Anything else? Position. Oh, interesting. Okay. Wealth. Very good. Okay, so you have this image, and it just says a garland and pendant. And from that image, you get all these characteristics in your mind that come from it. And all these things point to the object of, I'll just say a relationship of wisdom. Now, it's interesting that Solomon, he starts off saying that he's the writer of this book. And it's written to everyone. But now he's saying it's written to my son. So it's not just written to everyone, it's written to my son. Now, who is my son? My son, he's not just picking out one of his favorite boys and giving him this book. Solomon is writing to everyone. But he's portraying it in the context of relationship. To learn wisdom, you need a relationship with someone to teach you. And someone who is older, someone who is wiser, someone who is more experienced, someone who loves you, like a father, like a mother. And so, if he just said father, without the parallelism, you could think, okay, of course, Solomon's talking about himself. But he says father and mother. He's giving a fuller view that this is more than just about your parents, although it includes your parents for sure. But it's other people. Relationship teaches you wisdom. And that wisdom will give you the image of royalty, of importance. It will make you valuable. It will make you beautiful. And what I loved here in this image, the graceful garland for your head, the pendants for your neck, these images of this it's beautifying the person, amplifying the person. The important thing is not the garland and the pendant. The important thing is the head and the neck. And it's being beautified. It's being amplified. And so wisdom does that for the person. Wisdom in relationship. All right? So I'm just going to summarize here. The value of wisdom. And so as an application of it, we need to desire wisdom. If it's valuable, if it will amplify your life, it will empower you, if it will beautify you, you should want this thing. But how much do we want it? Often we don't realize its value. We don't realize that's the thing that can beautify and amplify us. All right, so, oh, beautiful. We have 10 minutes to finish the second half. All right. So this is but it's going faster now because now we have some images, some more images. The last two sections are just images. My son, starting verse 10, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We will have one purse. So here is an image. Before you had an image of wisdom of relationship wisdom. Now you have an image of the wrong crowd. Now, in America, this is how we call it. When you typical American high school, and you have the good kids who study and well behave, and you have the bad kids who party at night and disobey their parents. That's the wrong crowd. And they try to influence the other kids, make them do bad too. This is the real world. It's not just about disobeying your parents. It is about jumping people and killing them for money. And so there's this image of violence. These repeated words. I'll use a square. Repeated words of violence and death. Lie in wait for blood. Ambush the innocent. Like Sheol. Sheol is the Hebrew word for the grave. Swallow them alive. Like whole, like those who go down on the pit, down to the pit. So all these words of violence, of death. And then you have images of wealth. Find precious goods. I'll use a diamond here to mark. Precious goods. Fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us. We all have one purse. So through death and violence, you will gain wealth. That's the image of the wrong crowd. And what it's doing, it's enticing you. And here's the main point of the image. That's the characteristic of the image. It's violence and wealth. The object of the image, it's the enticement of folly. Now, folly being just the opposite of wisdom, foolishness, enticement of folly. And the application of that is beware of folly. It's going to entice you. It's going to tempt you. Now, honestly, who would be tempted to lie in wait for someone passing by, jump them, spill their blood, and steal their money? Not many of us would be tempted to do that. But we are tempted to do other things. Just the very idea of committing violence or committing sin or committing any sort of a lack of love for personal gain. And we may not kill someone for money, but we may gossip about someone to tear them down. We may spread rumors about someone to promote ourselves. We may change the truth a little bit to our boss to get ourselves ahead. We may hide the truth from our parents, hide the truth from our bosses, hide the truth from our spouses to prevent ourselves from getting into trouble. And all these are examples of the same image, that you do commit a sin in order to promote yourself, in order to protect yourself. And so that's the way of folly. Now the problem with that is that it doesn't lead in the direction that they think it leads. This is the direction it leads. Verse 15 through 19. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird. But these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. Now, there's an image of the path. You have repetitions of walk on the way. Do not hold back your foot, for their feet run to evil. Where else is there? And the way, such are the ways of everyone who is greedy. So there's this image that these guys are on a path, and their path, they think, is leading to riches. They think is leading to profit. But in reality, where is it leading? Their own life will be taken away. It's their own blood that will be spilt. They think their path is leading to their own riches, when in fact that path is leading to their death. And so the path is this image of wisdom and image of folly. Because in a path, what you do is you take daily steps. On a path, you step by step by step by step. You think about your daily habits in your life, the things you do. Now, a lot of times, we know what the Bible teaches. We know what we're supposed to do. Sometimes we're tempted to do the wrong thing, to do the unwise thing. But I justify it to myself, okay, I'm just going to do it this one time. And then I'll come back. Just step off the path, one step off the path, and then I'll just step back on. No problem. But the problem is that every step off the path is onto a different path. And you step further and further away from the path until you can't find your way back again. It's about daily habits, daily steps, step by step by step. And soon, it's not about where you are necessarily, but the direction you are headed. And every step off of the path is a step onto the path of folly. And so these guys are on the wrong path. They think it's leading to riches and wealth, but it's actually leading to their death. And so there's this whole theme. This is just a little section, but all throughout the book of Proverbs, you'll see this theme again and again of the path. Now, I'm going to jump ahead to the last point, the Jesus factor. And to understand the Jesus factor, what that means, honestly, I just made up this term to mean the gospel-centeredness of the passage. I didn't really find a really good and accessible term to mean this, so I just call it the Jesus factor. How does every passage in the Bible point to the gospel of Jesus Christ? And in this case, Jesus is wisdom. And so, of course, you follow him. And throughout the Old Testament, people were saying, follow wisdom, follow wisdom, follow wisdom, as if it's a path, and you go on it, and you go on it, and you go on it till you reach that destination of wisdom. Every teacher would say, follow wisdom. Jesus did not say, follow wisdom. Jesus said, follow me. Jesus was the personification of wisdom, the embodiment of wisdom. When he came up to Peter and Andrew, he said, "Follow me, I will make you fishers of men." When he came to the tax collector Levi, he said, "Follow me," and then he left everything and followed him. Many examples. He said someone wanted to come and follow Jesus, but first he wanted to bury his parents. Jesus told him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." Jesus said to others, "Whoever does not pick up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me." And he said for the sheep that when he goes before the sheep will follow him, for they will hear his voice. Every time, Jesus is not saying follow wisdom, he's saying follow me, because he's saying he himself is wisdom. Now he says that throughout all of the stories of the Gospels in the New Testament, except for one time. One time, when he's explaining to his disciples, he's going to die, he's going to go to the cross, and he says, "Where I go, you cannot follow." Peter says, no, I will follow you, even to my death I will follow you. And he asks him, "Where are you going?" But Jesus says, "Where I am going, you cannot follow." All the biblical teachers of the Old Testament would say, "Follow wisdom, follow wisdom, follow wisdom." Jesus says, "Follow me," except for the point where he goes to the cross. Because there are certain realities of this life that people simply cannot follow. You cannot follow into death. You cannot follow into resurrection. You cannot die for your own sins and survive. And so Jesus, he takes wisdom and takes it to eternity. He completes the path. He goes to the end of the road, this path of wisdom, all the way. Everyone else in the world, they follow the path of wisdom and it leads to life. Jesus followed the path of wisdom and it led to his death. And he did that to put you on that path, to show you what wisdom is, so that he himself could completely fulfill wisdom and give that wisdom to you. Now, the more we understand that, the more we realize the significance of what Jesus has done for us, not only to teach us wisdom, but to sacrifice himself to give us wisdom, then we start to live it out. Then we gladly follow him. Then we deny everything, pick up our cross, and follow him. Now that's the Jesus factor for this passage. We're going to see more in the following passages. Let me just close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for giving us this time to study your word. We thank you for this opportunity that we have to worship you. We pray that you would be present with us, Lord, that you would make yourself known, that your glory would lift up to the heavens. And for each one of us, Lord, fill us with your wisdom. Give us a clearer vision of Jesus and what he has done to fulfill that wisdom and give it to us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.